Hello, and welcome to Bop. That's Bop with an exclamation point. My name is Don McGlynn, and I hope you enjoy these podcasts that are giving you a wide array of points of view from historians and musicians alike. Chris Morris is somebody who's very well known for people who are enthusiastic about kind of all kinds of music. He's probably best known for writing about rock and roll. And like me, we sort of experienced the punk rock movement firsthand. But Chris also loves all kinds of music, classical music, blues. And when I told him I was working on this project, I knew that he would give me that sort of propulsive insight that you need from an interview subject. Chris does not hold back. He just tells you what he's feeling in a very strong, forceful way and in a colorful way. He's a great writer.
I don't know what it was about piano players, but it seems that the most radical pathology landed on them. Most notably, Bud Powell and Thelonious Monk. Bud Powell was in and out of mental institutions virtually his entire professional career, as a result probably of getting whacked on the head on 52nd Street at one point. And Monk always exhibited an otherworldliness, not quite connected with reality. You see the footage of him just getting up off of his piano stool, dancing around while the rest of the band's playing, while Charlie Rouse is soloing. And later in life, his wife pretty much had to take care of everything for him. And Nika, Baroness Nika, was very much his caretaker. He needed people to navigate through life because he was at home behind the piano bench, but in the real world, problem.
Yeah, he wasn't. And when you mentioned that, I think of Phineas Newborn too. He had his problem.
Finest.
I know that. I didn't want to say it though, but
well,
Calvin told me that's how you say it.
One of the lesser-known figures, who's kind of like late in the bop swing of things, is Finest Newborn, who was brilliant, super accomplished pianist out of Memphis, and he was severely afflicted with mental illness, and it shortened his career and his life dramatically.
So it seems to me, when I've been going through this music, this stuff is on fire for about 5, maybe 10 years, and it starts to change a lot. You could say that people like Dexter Gordon and Phil Woods kind of kept the flame going later on with some popularity in the 70s, but things seemed to change in the early to late 50s. Some people would call it cool, some would say it's modal, some would say that there's a kind of an influx of European style, like, Gil Evans is a little bit like Ravel, so is Boyd Rayburn. I mean, can you comment on the 50s and how it sort of morphed?
Well, I think I'm going to deny what you said.
Good.
Because bop, really, it continued in its hard bop manifestation into the 60s. And in a way, it attained a profile that it had never had in the 40s and 50s. You had things like Lee Morgan's The Sidewinder. That was a jukebox hit. You'd go into a black joint in Chicago, and that would be on the jukebox. So it wasn't as if the style disappeared. It kind of mutated into something, well, as the name suggests, harder. It was not as challenging harmonically, I think. But the format never really changed. You had, quintet, sextet. That was the basic form that the music took. And you had just sort of a streamlined, funkier materialization of it.
That's absolutely true. But there's this other thing going on, which you're right, and I think I'm right too, in that you had that whole Jerry Mulligan, Chet Baker thing going on. You had these other people that were going a little more cool.
Yeah, well...
Stan Getz.
Well, the first guy I ever saw live. The West Coast school was all bop-derived. People like Art Pepper, Stan Getz, Jerry Mulligan, Chet Baker. But they were kind of taking a page out of the cooled out aspect of things. Really, the birth of the cool session is kind of where things sort of split a little bit. They didn't want to play fast. They were still harmonically challenging, but it was just it burned at a lower heat. And interestingly enough, though, the musicians sort of reflected the same pathology that you found in the original New York boppers. They were junkies, they were crazy. People like Stan Getz getting arrested for armed robbery. Same book, different page.
Obviously, we're going to use a lot of the familiar clips. We've got Bird on camera with Dizzy. We've got Harry the Hipster. We've got Eckstein. We've got Dizzy with his big band. But we're probably going to end with So What? So if you have anything to say about how meaningful that was, because from my point of view, like some of the great quintets were, probably the one with Clifford Brown and Max Roach, some of the Blakey ones, probably the one with Wayne Shorter, and then, of course, Coltrane and Miles.
Kind of Blue was the first jazz album I ever bought. And for a lot of people, it's the same deal. And comes at a very interesting point in jazz history, because all those cats who are on that record, with the exception of Bill Evans, really, were all like hardcore hard boppers. They came out of the bop sphere, but they began play modally. It's where things diverge, but the hard bop is still there. It's the underpinning. You listen to Coltrane's solos, and they might be modal, but that big broad sound of his, it's right out of the old playbook. So that Sound of Jazz footage, is it Sound of Jazz?
Sound of Miles Davis.
Sound of Miles Davis, excuse me. We're fortunate to have the Sound of Miles Davis footage. I mean, that is when that band was really firing on all cylinders. And that footage was right about when they were making that record.
It's right in the middle. It's right in the middle of two sessions, but it doesn't have Bill Evans and it doesn't have Cannonball. But
yeah, well, it's Wynton Kelly's the piano player, right?
That's great.
We're lucky in certain cases that a band gets in front of a camera right at the right time. And Miles Davis's band got in front of the camera right when they were putting together Kind of Blue, which is, to this day, the best-selling jazz record of all time, and also sort of a crystallization of a certain point in Miles's musical thinking. He didn't hang in there for a long time, but he really was making a very important statement that there was another way to use the basic equipment of a jazz combo and get them to play in a less restricted way.
You probably can say this better than anybody, and that's why I'm going to ask you to do this. It'll be the last thing. But one of the things I loved about Ross Russell's book about Bird was how he was such an overpowering consumer of everything. Women, food, alcohol, drugs. Maybe you can comment on that sort of voracious appetite that he had.
Bird just wanted to take in the world. That's why he was one of the biggest junkies in the world, one of the biggest lovers in the world, one of the most virtuosic musicians, one of the most ravenous eaters in the world. It was like he wanted to engulf life. And as a result, he shortened his life. But you look at what he achieved in a very short period of time. It's interesting to consider the man's intake, and then to hear all this music just pouring out. There's this ecstatic rhapsodic quality to Bird's music that I don't think you hear in anybody else. The first time you hear a Charlie Parker record, you say, wow, how did that happen? There's nothing like it in jazz.
Yeah, that was great, Chris. It reminds me of what Teddy Edwards told me. He said he was like a comet. He just shot in out of here and shot right out.
Hey boppers, Kian here, and you just heard the second and final part in our talk with author-journalist Chris Morris. We hope these talks have shed some light on the lives of some of the people that contributed to the evolution of bebop and the real-world struggles that inform their art. Bop is produced by Don McGlynn and co-produced by Mark Cantor and Franny Alfano, edited by me, Kian Vaziri. Until next time, thanks and take care.